I'm Bill McWilliam, president of Cascadero Copper, CCD on the TSX Venture Exchange. Cesium is one of the world's rarest metals with a growing industrial demand. Drilling is underway on our Tehran property in Argentina to prove up a cesium resource. Cascadero's patent-pending leach process has the potential to make Cascadero the lowest cost supplier of cesium in the world. Visit our website, cascadero.com, or phone us at 604-924-5504.
You're listening to HowStreet.com radio, available online at TalkDigitalNetwork.com. Welcome to HowStreet.com radio, the online source for market opinions. Here is Jim Goddard.
My guest is Drew Zimmerman. He's a portfolio manager at PI Financial in Vancouver. His website's pifinancial.com and polarfuturesgroup.com. Welcome back to the show, Drew.
Thanks for having me on, Jim.
The Fed met today, and did we hear or see anything of significance?
No, to put it very bluntly and simply. We weren't expecting anything, so that's a good thing. It kind of matched up with expectations. They did say the economy is moving at a solid rate, so that was a slight upgrade, which is always a good thing. They are still cautious on inflation. Maybe to weigh on one hand and on the other sort of thing, but again, coming to the same conclusion that they do see gradual increases in the Fed funds rate coming forward. So that's largely what the market's looking for. We've got December almost all the way priced in, so it was very agreeable with the way markets have been positioned, and we saw that in the fact that we really didn't see any market action on the release of the minutes.
Now, the personality of the person who's appointed the head of the Fed will probably make a big difference. Who do you see sitting in that particular position?
Well, trying to guess what Trump is going to do or trade around it is going to be a mug's game. I mean, Trump likes to be Trump, and that's somebody who's a little unpredictable, to say the least. So, I mean, the market is leaning towards Powell. That's where, the odds makers are, that sort of thing. I think that is very much a case of let's just carry on as we have under Yellen, which I think, again, given that the market's sort of priced in that direction, would give us sort of the calmest transition. If we went to somebody else, whether it was Taylor or Warsh, there seemed to be more hawkish, that we would see faster rate hikes. That would probably upset the market from where we are right now, upset it in a way of higher rates, lower bond prices. Really hard to say which way it kicks the stock market immediately and probably strengthens the U.S. dollar. So the market is definitely pricing in Powell. And, I think if we get that, then the transition's going to be pretty smooth.
And, of course, there's always the possibility that Yellen will stay.
There is. And as I said, Trump does like to be unpredictable. And he came out this morning as he was ending another conference saying Yellen is terrific. That can just be him praising somebody on the way out the door. But again, with Trump, we never know. So, I would almost put Yellen, even though that's very low odds she stays in her job, as sort of a smooth transition as well.
As a trader, are you making any trades on who you think might be appointed?
As I said, Jim, trying to trade on what Trump may or may not do in a very short time frame can be a mug's game. It'll catch up with you. It's more rolling the dice than making a well thought out decision. So I'm not structuring anything around what I think will come directly from his appointment, although I do have themes in place that either accelerate or slow down given who he appoints.
We'll have more with Drew Zimmerman right after the break.
Glance Technologies owns and operates Glance Pay, a disruptive mobile payment technology now live in 16 cities in Canada and about to launch in the US. With revenues up 664% in the last quarter, Glance Technologies has the potential to be a worldwide leader in an industry projected to grow to $1.3 trillion in 3 years. Glance Technologies stock symbols are GLNFF in the US and GET in Canada. Find out more at glancepay.com.
Lotus Ventures Inc. is a BC-based medical marijuana company poised to launch into the rapidly evolving cannabis sector. Lotus is in the final review stage of the Health Canada approvals to become a licensed producer, having arranged facility financing of up to $12 million, plus building permits for its prototype indoor production facility. Shares trade under the symbol J on the Canadian Securities Exchange. Visit our website at lotusventures.ca.
Welcome back. We're speaking with Drew Zimmerman. Drew, what else is impacting your trading themes right now besides what might happen to the head of the Fed?
Well, there's always something going on. So again, right now it's a very busy end of the week for us. We've got the big U.S. employment number on Friday. We've got the ongoing tax negotiations. Again, are we seeing those roll forward, or are they kind of getting stymied? Are they getting reworked in a way that doesn't have the same sort of impact? So there's always something going on with your themes, but at the same time, you need to kind of pick a spot where you use your theme as a trading opportunity to get in and out. So right now, I'm looking for a stronger U.S. dollar theme to stay in motion. So that'll be impacted, obviously, quite a bit by the employment report Friday. I'm looking for that to come in strong, kind of carry some of the momentum that we had from the stronger than expected Q3 GDP last Friday.
The Canadian economy in August had its first downturn since last October. Why is that? Is it because the housing market is softening up?
We had an incredibly strong second quarter come out in the second quarter in Canada. So the last month was negative. The month before was flat. That was the first handoff month from the second quarter. I think we were just seeing an acceleration of growth as we had the Canadian dollar bouncing off lows. We had oil prices doing better. Real estate was continuing to do better. NAFTA, although it was getting negotiated, wasn't as much of a headwind as I think it is now. So I think we borrowed some growth from the future, to use those terms, in the second quarter. And now that we've seen, the Canadian dollar rallied 14%, we're seeing some of those growth aspects become a headwind. Now we've seen the Canadian dollar roll over from the beginning of September, but again, we've seen some of that growth roll over with it. So I look at it and say, it was stellar growth in the second quarter. I think we borrowed a lot of that growth from the third quarter, and now we're seeing that kind of get sucked back out of our GDP numbers.
Do you think if the U.S. boosts rates, Canada will match?
I don't think Canada can keep up without, the data dependency language that Poloz has now adopted, borrowing terms from Yellen and the Fed. I don't think Canada's in that position right now. He was just out again yesterday saying that they're more worried about inflation risk to the downside, even though it is a two-sided risk, still more worried about downside risks. There's still a lot of uncertainty in some of the policies that they see going forward. So I really don't think Canada's, in the same place to move as quickly as the Fed. I think we really did a lot to remove the emergency rate cuts when we raised 50 basis points this year. I think it's going to be well into next year, March or even mid-year, before we see another rate hike in Canada.
If Trump brings in his tax hikes, does Canada have to be really careful to make sure we remain competitive and make sure our taxes aren't higher?
That's a longer-term policy worry I would have. I know that doesn't have an immediate impact that's measurable in the currency markets that I like to trade. But you have to think on a larger scale of, if I'm building a new company and I need a new manufacturing plant, or, if I'm an educated person, where do I want to reside? I think we have to worry about that as Canadians. If we're moving towards a higher tax jurisdiction, and it seems to be trending that way, while the U.S. is trying to trend the other way, if they're more effective in that, I think it does have longer-term policy issues, and in that light is a longer-term drag on the Canadian dollar. But again, like I say, hard to measure an immediate impact in the currency markets that I trade.
Well, we have been promised a cut to the small business tax in, a couple of years?
That's true. We are looking for that to continue to move lower, which would be helpful. But again, overall, as an individual, especially as these tech jobs become more and more important. I mean, we've all read about Amazon spending $5 billion on their next giant campus. A few Canadian cities would love to have that. If you're a high-earning professional, it's an expensive place to live in Canada. So, again, I just think we need to make sure we're staying competitive.
Well, a study came out and it said in the high-tech world, Vancouver ranks in about the middle of 50 cities, but it has the lowest pay for high-tech people. How do you attract them?
Avocado and toast, I think, has been the secret sauce. That's of course a bit of a jab at the millennials that seem to reside here. It is a beautiful city, but again, we see a lot of disparity between what younger people are able to earn in the tech sector here, and if they're able to afford to live here. It's a very expensive city, so I really don't have a clear answer on what would bring the tech folk to a city that's as expensive as this is.
We'll have more with Drew Zimmerman right after this.
Hi, I'm Douglas Mason, President and CEO of Magnum Gold Corp. Inc., MGI on the TSX Venture Exchange. A 2015 drill program on the LH property intersected high-grade gold, including 16.9 meters of 13.58 grams and 11 meters of 20.66 grams per ton gold. A follow-up drill program is planned to further evaluate previously identified subsurface high-grade gold mineralization. Please visit our website at magnumgoldcorp.com.
Keep informed. Receive our weekly recap of thought-provoking articles, podcasts, and radio delivered to your inbox for free. Sign up for the HowStreet.com weekly recap on our homepage, HowStreet.com. Welcome back. We're speaking with Drew Zimmerman. Drew, what's your outlook for the U.S. dollar?
My outlook on the U.S. dollar is based in the fact that I think September 8th was a key turn date. We'd been heading lower throughout the entire year into that date. Dollar index reached 91. We've turned higher for the last 2 months. I think that kind of appreciation of the U.S. dollar can continue. I think that the U.S. is going to continue to raise rates at a rate faster than other countries, and currencies are always a relative game. So I think that's the underlying fundamentals of a continued rate hike. I do see, the European economy is doing better, but again, we've just had a fairly, a dovish tapering out of the ECB. So if we get a more hawkish tilt to the Fed saying they're going to continue to raise rates, and again, yes, December may be priced in, but we're looking out through 2018, where the market really isn't pricing in many more Fed rate hikes. So I think the market can still price in a much more hawkish Fed. And of course, that goes back to the start of the interview where, who's going to be at the helm will be key. But, this recent, call it 4-cent rally in the U.S. dollar, I think could just be the start. I think we could easily have another 4 cents or even get back to parity over the next few months on the dollar index.
So if you're bullish on the U.S. dollar, does that mean you're also bearish on gold prices?
I would put a time frame on that. Near term, yes, I think the same drivers that give us a stronger U.S. dollar will be a weight on gold. I really look at the real interest rate and how it impacts gold. So if we do have shorter term rates moving higher while inflation is still, looking to be found, then that's going to be tough for gold with real rates going higher. And then, of course, being priced in U.S. dollars, if the U.S. dollar is moving higher, then gold does struggle to do better in that environment. But that's in the short to what I would call medium term. I do see a market where we could have inflation picking up, and if inflation really picks up the way that I think it could, we would see inflation moving faster than the Fed's able to move. And then we get the real rate kind of turning for gold, where the real rate could then start being a driver, a very long-term driver, I think, of the gold market, where we could see gold and the U.S. dollar doing better as we see maybe the Fed tightening a little faster than we thought to keep up with inflation, but inflation's still outpacing. So then we've got gold moving up with the U.S. dollar as real rates move down.
It was announced yesterday by the CME that they aim to list a Bitcoin futures contract later this year. As a futures broker, what's your thoughts on that?
It's quite a development. I mean, Bitcoin has got everybody's imagination going right now. We've seen huge percentage moves in the Bitcoin market that have attracted traders of all kind. You've had, big guys like JP Morgan say that, they don't approve of it. They think it's a fraud. You've got Goldman saying, maybe there's something more to it. There's also more work on national levels. So the CME is an exchange. They trade commodities, currencies, that sort of thing. So they're going to bring, I agree, they're going to bring some level of qualification, to put it in that term, to it. It's going to have, a bigger availability to both the retail and institutional desks. They're going to be able to have more risk management if they're already dealing with Bitcoins. You're also going to have more speculative trading available. As a futures broker, I love the futures market. I think they offer the most efficient and effective way to trade what I want to trade, rather than having to trade a company that deals with the commodity that I want to trade. I want to be able to trade that commodity itself. So I think that's going to be a great tool for Bitcoin as people have struggled to trade it. We've seen a lot of these small companies that deal in Bitcoins get traded because they deal with the underlying commodity. So more of a pure play for people to be able to trade Bitcoins, which I think could be exciting. And as that volume picks up, you're going to have buyers and sellers. Remember, in the futures markets, it's a contract. So somebody's buying, somebody's selling. You've got people on both sides. I think that could do a lot to bring down the volatility of the Bitcoin market as well. So as much as it's been, wild and crazy so far, as it's been tougher to trade, if we see more trading come into it, that could dampen the volatility, which could then also maybe increase the appeal to a certain aspect of the market.
Do you see Bitcoin becoming part of that little package that the evening news puts on? The price of oil went down today. The Dow was up. The TSX was trading sideways. Do you see Bitcoin or some kind of cyber currency being listed on kind of the most active things being traded that day?
I definitely think it could. And again, news programs will do what grabs the interest of the people watching the programs. And I think Bitcoin's done that in spades over the last couple of years. A lot of the news has been, it's an astonishing run. But again, if it became a more legitimized, stable product, then again, I think that's something that people would pay more attention to on a daily basis. And if the people want to see it, the news wires will put it on the ticker.
Drew, thank you so much for chatting with us.
Thanks for having me on, Jim. I appreciate it.
My guest has been Drew Zimmerman. He's a portfolio manager at PI Financial in Vancouver. His website's PIFinancial.com and PolarFuturesGroup.com. You're listening to HowStreet.com Radio. Questions for the show or our guests can be emailed to info@HowStreet.com. I'm Jim Goddard. Thanks for listening.
Comments made on HowStreet.com Radio are an expression of opinion only and should not be construed in any matter whatsoever as recommendations to buy or sell any financial instrument at any time. Available online at TalkDigitalNetwork.com. HowStreet.com Radio is a production of HowStreet Media Incorporated.